I know the whole world is falling in love with Fred.
He's a tricky one to introduce because he's that talented and that charming and that lovely.
His talent is out of control.
I think Fred again's incredible.
Easily one of the most talented musicians on the planet.
Fred! Fred!
Fred again!
My guy, what's he gotta say?
We gon' make it through. You know who it is when I come through? I want you to see me, Fred. I'm here.
These guys are giving me life.
I became
We gon' make it through.
really obsessed with trying to take very fleeting moments
We gon' make it through.
and like trying to like expose as much
We gon' make it through.
beauty as is in them.
You know who it is when I come through. We gon' make it through.
I was a classical person when I was younger, for sure. Like, that was my upbringing.
Started playing the piano when I was, 6 or something, and the drums when I was 8, and the guitar when I was 9.
And then when I was 14, I started being able to use Logic
When I was about 16, I went to like a classical music college.
at Trinity.
The one thing I really loved and took most from classical music college was the discipline of like virtuosic players.
You just walk along every hot corridor and everyone will be practicing for 10 hours a day until their fingers couldn't play the scale anymore. That was always my mindset of discipline and hours of
Good, smart, diligent practice on the right things and a well-structured day.
It's a ridiculous, but like, I had written this thing, I called it an electronic symphony.
I said to my piano teacher, I was like, what defines a symphony? Basically, it's actually really loose. Like, the definition of a symphony is just a series of like timbres. Like, you couldn't write a symphony for piano, but you could write a symphony for small orchestra, and you could write a symphony for even like organ, technically, because it's lots of different timbres. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to get me a symphony. All I have to do is just turn up and make lots of different noises. So I just got really enamored by the idea of like, I can get me one of them. I can't believe it. So I just went in on it and made this, I did 2 of them.
When did you graduate?
I didn't graduate, no, I left after a year and a half.
I just lost my fascination with it. And then I was working with Brian and I dropped out to make a record with him.
I was filming it because I was like, every time I see Brian, he just comes sprinting.
A friend of ours, Mel, who we love, knew Brian as she was a neighbour, and she showed him the symphony, the second one I'd done. And so he invited me to come along to this singing group he does every like Tuesday. Then I'd just hang after the sessions with Brian, and I'd start to help him with his music, and he'd start to help me with my like projects. And I got very, very fortunate. I mean, I hustled hard. Like, if he told me make a song out of this, I'd make like 30 different things to play them by the next day and like not sleep. So I was definitely behind the scenes. I was like making sure this did not go to waste.
And then I produced an album with him and Carl Hyde.
The older I get, the more lucky I realise I am to even be in the same time as him, let alone be like great friends. But yeah, he'd been mentoring me since then.
When I first met him, he was my one point of reference in terms of how big producers are. I've since learned that it's not how any of the others are, in a beautiful way. Like, he exists in his own lane. He was in
Talking Heads, you too, like so many.
And he invented ambient music. Well, loosely invented ambient music, yeah.
I have to say, and this is not modesty or false flattery or anything like that, I think of Fred as my mentor as well. I didn't really understand a lot of what he was doing. It took me quite a while to think, oh my gosh, this is really a new idea about how you can make music. It's a two-way relationship, I mean, I'm very flattered to be called a mentor of someone whose work I like a lot, but actually it worked both ways around.
But then on the side, I started writing a lot of songs with friends of mine and finding ways to get them off to A&Rs and labels and stuff.
Basically, my brother who manages me, we just went absolutely in and just did like sessions with everyone we could possibly find to do a session with, and went crazy for like 4 years or so and just tried to climb the ladder of like pop and hip hop music. I mean, shouts out to my brother as well, because he's got an incredible ear, so he would often find artists who would then since blow up, but he would find them on their first video and get them along for a session. So like everyone from Steph London, Jose from Oh Wonder, Storms to a degree, like it was early days when we first worked with Storms. And
that same year in 2017, you have your first real hits. George Ezra one. And the Clean Bandit one. The next year, I Don't Care ends up being a big song everywhere, and you have Ed Sheeran featuring Justin Bieber, and you have, you know, a ton of songs on the number 6 collaborations project for Ed.
I remember the first time Ed mentioned you to me, it was like he had discovered some kind of symbol of chemistry that no one had ever discovered before. And you were obviously making music before that, but from his point of view, he was like, I found my guy.
Oh,
like,
that's very sweet.
This guy just gets me and does work at the highest level, and was so effusive and so, you know, he just was talking and talking.
What I love about Fred, I was saying this earlier, is like, we wrote I Don't Care together, we wrote Beautiful People together, and we wrote Bad Habits together, and blah, 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 and I feel like no one knows the joy that he gets in making pop.
He's a pop guy.
Yeah.
There was a very effortless synergy. We just would write 3 songs a day, every day. One would be bad, one would be quite good, and one would be weird. And maybe sometimes 2 would be good. But usually it would just, you get to the end of the day and be like, great, let's do it again.
You know, I think we knew you from working with people and helping them achieve their goals and producing and writing music beautifully and so tastefully, and you know, you were winning awards and revered at that point. Did you have to make a distinction between the two for you? Did you have to say, this is now going to be my Fred again time, and I'm not Fred Gibson in the studio working with Ed and entirely and on its own?
You know, when I was like 6, well, from sort of 10, when I started writing songs, to 20 or whatever, I was doing my own music, and then through no intention, I just kind of ended up working with other, like it just kind of is what naturally took place. Yeah. And so then, but there was a slight feeling of like, after a few years, there was a feeling that there was something like I needed to make that I wasn't making.
And funny enough, Brian, who keeps getting, you know, the honourable mentioned Brian, he emailed me at about that time saying, okay, Fred, enough, let's get back to doing some of your stuff. And I was like, safe, we're in sync.
I would just take my laptop places and set up, and then when I'd run out of charge, I'd go work in a cafe and charge it up again, and then go out again. The fact that you can just sit on the river and make a whole finish like that is, to me, just like the novelty of that will never wear off. The fact that you don't need anything other than just 2 hours of charge. But for what I was trying to make, I definitely wanted it to feel earthy and like it was all built from the world. So making it in the world made more sense to me, if you know what I mean.
One thing I know is that when I'm there, like, I make loads of ideas, and when I'm in the vacuum of my own thing, I tend not to. So like, it's affecting me hugely. Sometimes it really is like really on the nose. Like, you'll be making something and then you'll see like some guy go past on like a skateboard, like doing a move, and the way he moves, like, makes you think like, oh yeah, the bass is actually isn't giving the feeling that it needs to do this. And then sometimes it's much more like, you know, abstractified, and you'll see like a dad with his kid having a time, and that would just make you realise that
there's an emotional resonance in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think often it's subconscious. When I was in the beginning of making the first record, I had that feeling of not having suffered enough to warrant the things that I was wanting to write about. Do you know what I mean? That like imposter syndrome of like, I can't be the one to write about this. And then I did suffer, and I learned that I didn't need to. That I was just as entitled to write about what I want to write about 4 years ago as I am now. But it is one of the sort of byproduct blessings of an experience like that, is that it sort of brings you closer to the humans in the world.
I found you exploding. I found you beautiful. Don't know a thing that could feel more heavy. Babe, I'm ready.
How has your career felt post Boiler Room?
This man is extraordinarily talented across the board. Sold out US tour, sold out European tour, Coachella, smashed it, what? Yeah. Introducing Fred again for Boiler Room!
First time in a long time, no disrespect to anyone else, but where a DJ set had become the talking point in areas outside of the community. It's the first time in a long time where the concept of creating a set in a club and streaming it wasn't just being talked about on those forums or on those social media sites or on those places. People who write about music in general are like, this shit is off the fucking chain. What was that like in that room? Because I mean, there's so many clips that have gone viral. I mean, that geezer who just like pulled up your record by accident.
So Rambo that like all of my best friends like couldn't even get close anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like,
yeah.
Bye guys, and
You're
then
on your own,
like,
Fred.
and then you're looking at these people around you like, all right, well, so you're my crew for the next thing, and then it kind of naturally, cross-pollinates and permeates into different humans, and it was, it was very, very present tense. I was forced right into the present tense.
Thank you guys, for real.
I mean, there's like sort of surreal moments where I'm sort of forced to acknowledge like, well, something's changed. Like when we put on the Brixton shows in London at the end of the year, and then Sheeran, actually being the sweetie that he is, called me and he was like, Fred, and I was like, hi. And he was like, there were 71,000 people in the queue for your tickets this morning. And I'm like, what is that? Like, and then, so those like things where it's like, okay, well that's, something's changed. Like I can't ignore that, like, that wasn't the case once.
The point is, the world is ready for it. So when you step on that stage, you're gonna see it because they're already ready. That's culture. That's culture. Culture. It's gotta show from me, you. That's done. That's done. What do you do with it now?
You know, I didn't know when I was starting it that it would be the last one of this sort of trilogy.
This is where like collaboration is such a godsend. So I think I'm going to try exploring in those realms for a second. Because I think that will be the best thing to do.
He'll love me telling the story. Him and his brother have this dance group called Rain Radio, and their one goal is to make music that they can eventually get like a Vegas residency and chuck cakes into the crowd. Like they're just like, let's make the perfect dance music.